Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your peachy die fentanyl update for the 30th. Oh my God. Where do I start? Well, read the ticker. That's a good place to start. The fentanyl analog ban that was put in place by DEA a couple of years ago under emergency authority is about to expire. Pelosi has on her desk a bill passed by the Senate to permanently schedule those analogs, and she refuses to bring it up into the House for a vote. And by the way, may I point something out with this, which the breathless media is talking about that as this is a plenary authority on Pelosi's part. Well, it sort of is, except for one thing. There's this thing called a discharge petition. You can, in the House, file one, and if it succeeds, then you can force the Speaker to bring a bill to the floor. So let us talk about whether or not this is a unitary matter for Nancy Pelosi or whether it isn't, because it isn't. And that means that you have people on both sides of the aisle who are more interested in seeing political points scored on both sides through the death of Americans than solving this problem. I think that says everything that needs to be said. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked at all if you had 535 members of Congress who were willing to spread coronavirus all over the United States if it would make Trump look bad on both sides of the aisle for their own political power. Because by God, that would be it would be a horrible thing, but it would suit certain persons' political aspirations really well, and therefore you can bet that if there was some way for them to do this without potentially getting infected themselves, they'd probably do it. It wouldn't shock me in the least. It is the same sort of craven BS that's going on with this fentanyl thing. Don't ever try to run this crap that this is just Nancy or this is just the Republicans or that's not how the House works, folks. Again, go look up a discharge petition. Because if the members of the House really wanted to do something about this and kneecap Pelosi on this issue, they could. But they don't, and they won't, and that's where you are. And you lap this shit up like Pavlov's dogs. All right. Impeachment-wise, I think it's over on Friday. We're going to find out. We got another day of questioning. Rand Paul's all pissed off. Yeah, okay, whatever. Honestly, I think this is just it's a sideshow at this point, and it's stupid. But this is what we're now, our political environment has devolved into. My guess is, though, is that we'll see. We get the vote. We'll get a vote on Friday on the witnesses and stuff like that. And if, in fact, that fails to compel additional testimony and witnesses, then it's also clear that there are not 67 votes to remove the president. That vote will immediately be taken, and the impeachment will be over. This, by the way, is exactly what Nancy Pelosi does not want to have happen with Trump showing up for the State of the Union address. Oops. Nancy, sometimes you got to wonder if all that vodka was really so wise to drink, because it does appear that your caucus shoved you in a corner, and instead of telling them to go suck a pig, you instead went along with it, and now you're going to get your ass handed to you. Look, I don't like a lot of what Trump has done since he's been in office, but throwing him out on the basis of what Barack Obama did, on what Bill Clinton did, what George Bush did, I mean, yeah, good God, who remembers bombing aspirin factories because of political aspirations and wag the dog garbage? And Madam Albright and all of the crap that went on during her time as, in the administration. Folks, it is astounding to me how short memories are in this country. I think it has to do with all these screens that we stuff our face with and everything else these days. And all these pretty faces on CNN and Rachel Maddow. How is that, even on TV anymore? I don't want to use a C word. I might. Now you know which word I was thinking of. Okay. Anyway, let's talk about the coronavirus. We have the new update out. Came out last night. Hasn't changed materially today through this morning. So we're looking at 24-hour periods here. Okay, and again, we've seen it again looks today to be linear. It is slightly down in percentage terms from where it was yesterday. I know the number itself, 7783, looks really bad. Essentially, all of them are still mainland China. We have not had any confirmed person-to-person transmission in the United States. Zero. Now, what we do have at this point is a petri dish for virulence, and that is a cruise ship that has now been quarantined with all the people on it. So in another week or so, we're going to get some facts that are outside of China's control, and that's a good thing. And as I have pointed out, the real test as to whether or not this is a hair on fire kind of event or something that is going to level off and do a lot of damage inside China, but maybe not so much anywhere else, is going to be known sometime here within the next 7 to 10 days. My guess is at this point it's about a week. And if we have a hair on fire kind of situation in the United States, I think we're going to know about it quite quickly, simply because our caseload is low enough at this point, numbering whole 5, that anybody who they think has the virus is going to get immediately tested. And it may take a day or two for those results to come back. But the thing is that, there you go. Now, there's a lot of people screaming about the confirmed death count, which has gone up a lot. Well, what do you expect? If you have a bunch of people that are critically ill, and the people who are critically ill have very bad odds, right? They show up at the hospital, for crying out loud. We're not talking about, the basic go to the doctor kind of thing. We're talking about people that actually get admitted. If you've got those folks, they're critically ill, they end up in the hospital, a lot of them are not going to walk out of there. All right, that's just the way it is. So I expect the death count's going to go up. But folks, let's keep perspective on this. Ordinary flu, kills 80,000 Americans a year. And almost all of them die from secondary infections. Pneumonia, most of them are elderly. The second batch is very young, okay? And then the third is immunocompromised people that, if they get basically anything, they're in a lot of trouble because their immune system is compromised and can't fight it off effectively. But other than that, the flu's a pain in the ass, okay? And it causes a decent amount of morbidity too. But again, as of today, do not light your hair on fire because the case rate, although it looks like a straight vertical line, it's actually down a little bit from yesterday. So, in terms of percentages. Right? In terms of numbers, of course, it's going to continue to go up. But you have to look at percentage changes. The exponential kind of explosive growth that you would expect to see is not happening in the reported numbers. Now, again, China lies. All right? But, folks, China lies both ways. All right? For those of you that are running around saying, oh, my God, here's this YouTube video. It's 100 times worse than it's being reported. Okay, so the bad news is not a lie, but the good news is a lie. Excuse me, liars lie. Therefore, you have to assume that it's all lies. And until proven otherwise, that's the position you have to take if you're going to be intellectually consistent about anything related to this. I think it's important that we do be intellectually consistent about everything related to this. And the facts are that this is a problem. Absolutely. So there you go. What else do we have going on right now? Not a whole hell of a lot. If I want to raise one other comment, it's Tesla. Oh my God. Hair on fire, $650 a share. The valuation on this company is ridiculous. Okay. Now, you may think that Tesla is going to save the world. I personally don't. If I was Elon, of course, this is Trump and Elon, and the stock prices must go up. And by the way, Microsoft's valuation is getting pretty ridiculous too. So are a lot of these companies. In fact, essentially all of them. One of the things that I think that people need to be keeping in mind is that these kinds of valuations leave little or no room for mistakes. Okay, now that doesn't mean that, they can't continue to go up because, of course they can. But if I was Elon and I was really looking at this kind of a situation, I would be immediately doing a big secondary and raise a whole shit ton of cash. And why? Because, by God, if people are willing to pay $650, I'm going to sell them a lot of shares. Okay. But, do I think he's going to do it? No, because that would, of course, dilute everybody. The price would go down. So, that's not going to happen. But it should. And that's the difference between responsible stewardship and actually running a public company in the interests of doing the right thing, as opposed to running a public company because, by God, we got a big number. You remember, 420 funding is secured. Well, wait a minute. How come if this was so sure that this was going to happen, why didn't he take the company private and get his 420? Okay? So, again, madness of crowds, the insanity of momentum. Yeah, all right. All of this, and all this Fed money sloshing around with trillion-dollar deficits, which, by the way, GDP report was out. I have to go through it. But I'm going to compare the nominal against the fiscal deficit, and I'm willing to bet that the number doesn't look nearly so salutary when I get done with that. Maybe I'll do an article on it. I don't know. I'm going to be on Stocks and Jocks tomorrow morning, folks. If you want to tune in at 7:00 Central Time, and one of the things that I think is interesting about that is we'll probably talk about the GDP thing and the fiscal deficits. But you'll notice that, of course, the GDP uses this thing called a deflator, which doesn't respond to that accurately. There's no need to calculate this deflator thing, which you can tamper with. All you got to do is look at the fiscal spending and the deficit numbers, and it's percent of the economy. That's it. And then that comes off the nominal GDP growth, and there is your real number minus private unsecured funding, unsecured credit, which, unfortunately, now there's an awful lot of it. But, there you go. Anyway, that's what I got for today, folks. Again, I'm not going to ring the alarm bell on one side or the other, okay? And I think that we have to, if you are in the China lies camp, and I am firmly in that camp, because everything China does is a lie, then by God, you have to take this very same position with everything else that China does. All right, both on the good and the bad. So when you get all these hair on fire things, you have to look at it that way too. All right, and I think that's important to keep in mind. One other thing that's interesting: FaceSucker is getting pounded pretty good. They reported earnings last night, and they're getting hammered for about 5%. Why? Because their user growth is in the United States basically zero. Gee, I wonder why. Everybody that could possibly be on it is on it, except for people that have a brain like myself and don't use it. And so now the question is, how do you continue to ramp revenue? And the answer is you have to get more intrusive and sell more data and pry further into people's lives. And exactly how far does that go before it folds back? Well, that's the problem all these social media companies have, and it's one that nobody wants to talk about. But, there you go, because essentially the bottom line is, unless they can find some way to screw you, they can't make any money. And I know you don't think it's being screwed, but trust me, you are paying for all of that ARPU, the average revenue per user, and more, because that's just how it works. No company operates intentionally at a loss. Anyway, there you go. I'm your ticker guy. Have a good day.